Hey everyone, this is Robert, and thank you for tuning in to the podcast. And hope everybody's doing well out there, and they're staying cool. And as we're approaching, as I guess we're kind of starting to get into this, into like the summer season. It's been kind of hot, and now it's cooled down, and now it's gonna get hot again. So today we're just gonna be chatting, and we're gonna just chill because that's pretty much what I love doing on the podcast. So I have Chris Akawa in the corner. Or I'll just say Chris because I have a terrible habit of butchering last names. So thank you for joining me, Chris.
Of course, my pleasure, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. So yeah, would you like to what I usually do is I have like we could just talk a little bit about where people can find you on and what roles that you've been doing and all that good jazz. So a little bit of a icebreaker, so to speak, of getting to know you,
Yeah, for
stuff
sure.
like that. So let's do
Uh,
it.
cool. Yeah, I try and be accessible on social. I'm on Twitter these days. Maybe at the time of this airing, Twitter will have fallen. I'm at Chris Okawa, ChrisOcowuh on Instagram and Twitter. And I update different stuff that's going on in my life versus stuff that's going on in my career there. I love engaging with folks, chatting about things that I'm a similar fan of because I'm a gamer myself and I'm an anime fan myself, as well as getting to act in those. As far as titles people may know me from, I play Rogan and Magician in uh the House of the Dead remake. I also more recently play Hercules in Divine Knockout, as well as that just came out 5 days or was announced 5 days ago, Corvus Masquerade in the new upcoming Midnight Masquerade event for Paladins. That's what I've been up to. I also have gotten to dabble in anime. I've done six projects thus far in like the last like 14 months. I'm still a little bit newer to the scene. But one of those I was lucky enough to do an OVA to do a film that went to theaters, Realma Prince of Tennis, and I've been working with the Prince of Tennis franchise since under Howard Wang's direction. That's what I'm up to these days. Hopefully that checks the box.
Yeah, totally. So I just Yeah, it's really fun getting to work with Howard. I know that he's also been, you know, exploding into the voiceover scene as of late, especially over the last few years. Like he's been doing really great. So Howard, if
Yeah,
you ever listen to this, hats off and congrats and keep on crushing it out there, man.
for sure. He's the man.
Oh, totally. So I think you kind of got this question before, but how would you describe growing up, how was it like for you? And how did voiceover come into your mind? Were you always like kind of a kid who's like, oh, I want to be this and this and this and this and this? Like, when did this all like kind of start, I guess, formulate, I guess sort of like developing of like, oh, hey, maybe I could do this. This seems to be for me. So what
Mhm.
is your little, I guess, origin story?
For sure. Yeah. I think my origin story um really centers on at my grandparents' house. I grew up in I was partially grew up in Northern California, partially in Arizona. And I had these just wonderful I was adopted into a Japanese family on my dad's side. So I had these like wonderful little Japanese grandparents that I was super close with and were a big part of my growing up. And I remember my grandma really loved Snoopy. And so she had like a room full of Snoopy merch, and Peanuts was always on the menu to watch. And I also first encountered Cartoon Network there because we didn't have cable at my house at that time. And I got really attached to Scooby Doo, actually, started watching a lot of Scooby Doo, and I was fascinated by it. I think that I initially gravitated towards the animation. I wanted to be an animator when I was little. I would watch the behind the scenes of the Pixar stuff, and I know they would have the featurettes before the VHSs, of Lion King, how they brought in the lions into the studio. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be an animator. And I didn't really have, I would say I don't have a natural gift for conveying a image from my mind into my hand. And so um the next best thing, the way I saw it, or the similarly best thing, was the people on the other side of the glass in the animation studios, bringing these characters to life. My mother was a New York actress, and so I grew up in a theatrical family surrounded by actors and family friends that were actors and acting in plays, and so that became my path and my I set my course for that and never looked back from a young age.
Right on, man. I think we kind of have similar, like, sort of beginning, like, on our little treks, like our journeys and stuff, because I also grew up with, like, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney, the works. So
Hmm.
I because I also wanted to be an animator too, and then I mean technically I'm still working in animation, as a
Hmm.
voiceover artist, and also I just like making stuff up, like storytelling and play pretend. That's just
Hmm.
always been my thing since I was a kid.
For
So,
sure.
yeah.
Good stuff.
um, yeah. So, was there like anything that you remember, like as a kid, that you really love? I mean, I know you mentioned Snoopy, but anything else that kind of comes to your mind as like, oh wow, maybe I should do something like this, that just really stood out to you in a way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I really loved the old-timey, like, Boomerang stuff, so I
Oh
loved,
yeah.
I loved Tom and Jerry and loved catching the Hanna-Barbera stuff and Jetsons and Flintstones, just Bugs Bunny and all the stuff he got up into,
Oh
the
yeah.
screaming, the just, like, the very just wild screaming of,
Oh
when Tex
yeah.
Avery
Mel
would just
Blanc.
yeah, Mel
Yeah.
Blanc, yeah, when Mel Blanc would
Tex
just
Avery.
lose it.
Yes.
Uh, so, um so yeah, I think that I thought it was so funny. I just I cut up whenever I watched it. I thought it was so entrancing. I remember I got to the point where I was like something like 12 or something, and my grandfather started to get concerned for me because he's like, "Oh, cartoons, cartoons are for children." And you're a young man, right? He's a first generation Japanese American immigrant, and he wanted me to be strong, and he had this idea of what adulthood and masculinity meant. And he had a grandson who was, pushing 6 feet, sitting on the couch, just like cracking up at the Looney Tunes, And so I think that like that was when I started being a bit of an odd duck in my family, in my family outfit, as far
Yeah.
as my just love and passion for animation. I just love every aspect of it, even to this day, especially. I rewind sequences and see how, whether it's Family Guy or whether it's Disney or whether it's Cartoon Network, just seeing how they translate these different the movements, or seeing if they're pulling an item out of hammer space, which is where they pull something out of nowhere, seeing how these different uh how movement is conveyed through animation. And so I think that I the natural path is you watch the animation and you're like, I would like to be a part of that. And and when I started feeling like, oh, I don't know that I even have like the type of natural ability to be an animator, then I was like, what's the next thing I can do to still be in the room? And as far as studios, I was just obsessed with everything Cartoon Network put out. Um, and I became a student of it, really.
Nice. Um, I guess I consider myself to be a student of animation too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you spend hours watching something and trying to learn from it, aren't you a student?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Whether it's to study voiceover or just study like how the characters move, like it just always just captivated me ever since I was little.
Yeah, same.
Yep. So, after growing up, like, let me see. Uh, because I know that you've been at this for at least a few years now.
Hmm.
So being in the uh, b- going into the industry, like, and especially, these last 3 years as we've been, navigating our way through this whole crisis that's been going on and other stuff that's been happening around the world, like after we've entered into the new decade. So I'm just kind of curious, like, how has the pandemic affected, like, I guess your personal life, or like specifically just your work ethic and how you've been, working and whatnot.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been in the industry about 8 years.
Mm,
And I started right out of college, and then my wife and I got married, and we moved straight out to New York City.
congrats, by
And
the
out in
way.
thank you. Out
Yeah,
in New York City, I was hustling. I was doing catering. I was working restaurant jobs. I was temping. I worked as a luxury flower shop manager for years. And I was embedded in what I experienced. My New York was very tangible. I was catering on rooftops. I was catering in the New York Public Library. I was being a part of people's best days of their lives, as a florist. I was connected to people, and I was connected to New York. And during the pandemic, all of a sudden all of that stuff dried up, and all of a sudden I'm at home, and I was disconnected from New York. I became increasingly disconnected from New York. And New York in its own right, in some degrees, became a little bit more dangerous, became a little bit more isolatory. And so, as far as the pandemic, as far as my relationship to New York, it really it strained my relationship to New York. I felt less of a sense of place, because my simultaneously, the wonderful thing that happened is that we got remote recording, and I've been recording remotely for years at that point. But I was upgrading my setup. I got Source Connect finally. I started playing ball, and I started seeing a lot more opportunities. I ended up getting my agent during that period. I ended up doing the biggest titles I'd ever done during that period. And I eventually was able to go full time VO, coming out of the backside of of a couple years in quarantine. And I never did go back to the day job. And so a combination of my world kind of shrinking a little bit, my physical world shrinking a bit, and my digital world expanding, it was quite an adjustment, and I'm super, super grateful for the opportunities I've been afforded, and how it changed my life profoundly. And I was able to work in my dream industry. But it was, I was disoriented for a sec there, for sure. Like a lot of us, I'm sure.
right on, man. Yeah, balancing a day job and VO work. Let's talk about
Yeah,
that.
for
I
sure.
feel like not too many people really discuss like the challenges of having to juggle, working. I mean, it is still work, but having to go into a day job and then come home and then still have to deliver via work to clients, that's like, yeah. Um, let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
if
for
you have any
sure.
advice regarding.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I really recommend getting a job that has flexibility. A lot of people naturally go into a lot of actors who work in restaurant because that's sort of built in. I'm a big fan of catering as well, especially if you live in a major market like New York or LA. I have friends that are valets that are voice actors. I think work from home job is probably ideal if you can manage that. I know that I just mentioned that because that market has just exploded in the last 3 years, right? Data entry, clerical stuff. I did pretty much every job. I worked in grocery for a while. Some of them were more amenable to voiceover than others. There was a time, uh, though, where when I'd be working like an office job or working a job that had I wasn't able to just pop on the mic and then pop back to the job. Um, I found that, you've come up with like a lot of these different expectation management tricks where you're like, oh, I can get this to you by end of day. It becomes the finish line as opposed to within the next hour that it is now, um or very, very meticulously. Digitized all my calendars, my work calendar, my VO calendar, everything. So when I'm giving availability, I'm giving genuine availability. It just takes that extra layer of management. But if you like have to pick a gig and you are good at computers, I really highly recommend folks look for work from home. Again, the work from home renaissance started after I started working from home as a voice actor, so I've not been in the market, so I'm not sure what marketplaces to look for those jobs in, but I'm really, I'm positive that there's more work from home opportunities now than when I was developing my business even 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah. So I guess we can also talk about, your lifelong love of musicals and, your experience of being, trained classically on the stage.
Yeah.
What what is something that you remember fondly about being up on the stage? And what is it that you so love about musicals?
Yeah. I think that, musicals get a tough rap these days, but when they are done well and they're done with intention and they're done naturalistically and meaningfully, I think it's an incredibly powerful medium, and definitely under appreciated in our culture. Even from a young age, with the defunding the arts movement from years and years back, we're starting to feel the repercussions of that with depleted theater attendance, depleted theater budgets, which really breaks my heart. And I hope that they can turn it around. But, I grew up, my mom was a musical theater actress in New York. And so we always had cast albums on hand playing. She was, doing cabarets and doing musicals with friends. Her friends would travel and stay with us for periods of time when they were working on projects. And so, there's always singing in the house, music lessons going on in the house. I, took vocal lessons growing up, and my family had a theater company, and so musical theater particularly became my life for almost a decade. And I would do my homework in the library at lunch, and then right after school I would head over to the theater and either help build some sets or attend rehearsal or help with some lighting testing. It was my whole world. And it's still I have such a tender place in my heart for it. As far as like favorite pieces I've been a part of, I was in a production of the Fantastics, and my wife actually worked on that production as well, in college, and it was just transcendent. It was I played El Gallo, and it was just a role that deeply resonated with me. The music and the singing was right in the center of my range. Very um it was very simpatico, the experience. It was the first time in a role that I felt like, oh, this isn't much work at all. Which was so refreshing, and it was such a meaningful experience.
Oh, for sure, man. Let's talk about some of the roles that you've done because I know you
Yeah.
mentioned you were on the House of the Dead and you've also done Fire Emblem. So I'm
Hmm.
like, here. So I'm just because House of the Dead and Fire Emblem, they're like really big properties, like massive
For sure.
franchises, like particularly Fire Emblem, which has kind of been having pick it's definitely picked up steam, like
For
I
sure.
think after the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, I
but
think like three
especially since
houses.
like
Yeah.
the 2010. So I wanted to, you know, just congratulate you on that
Thank
and
you.
just does it still feel like a little surreal getting to be a part of such a massive like, franchise like Fire Emblem and also House of the Dead? Not to mention a
Yeah.
lot of the other stuff that you've been working on as of late.
No, for sure. The Yeah, it's deeply humbling. It's deeply humbling, and I feel like a guest in someone else's well-prepared house, with both of those properties because, like you said, they're like 20 something years old, and to step into the driver's seat for House of the Dead, and Natalie Rohr's just incredible casting on that game and tremendous. I want to give her a shout out. She's a wonderful voice actress and casting director. I was so um I think my biggest projects I've worked on in voiceover particularly, they felt like either like you open the email and like time stops, or you open the email and you can't quite fathom what is happening. I think it's something like that because they feel in the moment they feel really inconspicuous. And then as time goes on, you're like, "Oh, that was a huge moment in my career. That was a huge break that I had in my career. I'm so grateful for that." There's all these other things that matriculated out of that. But House of the Dead was definitely one of those. I just had moved and was moving my, excuse me, I was moving my home studio into a separate room because we could finally afford a apartment that had a dedicated booth. Previously, my booth had always been at the foot of my bed. And I got House of the Dead, and it was one of the first things I recorded in there. I don't even think the sound treatment was up. I think I just like leaned all the sound treatment along everywhere and worked off of a MKH 416 shotgun mic. But by the seat of my pants, I was able to get that recorded, and then so much changed. Before that game, I saw myself as primarily as a commercial voice actor. I was not doing a ton of. I did some character stuff here and there, like Heroes of New Earth and stuff, but I was not doing pre-lay animation. I was not doing anime, and working on House of the Dead was a real turning point for me, and it caused me put a little fire underneath me, and I started uh participating in the community. I started, seeking out those auditions, and then ultimately I was able to get signed, and now I have wonderful opportunities for my team. But so that was House of the Dead. It was like one of those things where it's like it was really I recorded it probably in 1 hour's time. I remember we got the email back, and Sega said for the first time in a long time they had no retake orders for any of the voice performances. Everyone did a really sharp job on that. And then with Fire Emblem, which we recorded late last year, I got um I got Fire Emblem and Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. I got those emails on the same day, and I was in New Orleans on it was my birthday weekend. I was turning 30 years old. And they both had code names on them, and like all games, and I'm sure many guests have talked about this, but you don't know what the game is until you're in the session. And I just knew that I was signing a contract with Square Enix, and I was signing a contract with Nintendo, and I wasn't sure what was going on. We ended up recording both those like a month later. And Fire Emblem was just a tremendous honor because I know people just love they hold the series so dear. They delve into the lore. Three Houses had seen this huge reinvigoration of the series. Engage came out around the same time as they announced Vigard. And also my character, is the Silent Emperor, and also like had never been voiced before. So it was really a tremendous honor to get to debut the Vigard voice. I got to be directed by Patrick Seitz, who's Gamagori and Endeavor and just everything. And his voice is really like that when he talks to you, which is crazy. And I remember, and I don't think I haven't told Patrick this, but he would give not line reads, but he would like explain how the line, like the energy that he was looking for. And he's so masterful as an actor that you hear it and you just kind of fall in love with how he did it. And a part of you is like, wow, you would do this so much better than me. Um, and we had, a couple writers from Nintendo on the line. It was really quite a surreal experience. It did go very quickly, much like House of the Dead. It was just a short hour, but to be a part of that legacy is a tremendous honor.
Oh, yeah, and you've also worked with clients like Harry Potter, Chase, Pepsi. Reading off of your website, but for the
Yeah.
record, and also congrats for the Addy Award winner. You
Yes,
know,
thank you. Yeah, working with FlexJet, I worked with them for a couple years.
oh yeah, totally. Yeah, Addy Award winner. I was almost going to say Emmy Award winner, but we all know that title belongs to Ben Diskin. By the way, Ben, if you're watching this, love you, man.
Ben's
But
great.
yeah. Yeah, and getting signed with Atlas, like how is the whole process like? Especially like I know the people, not people. I know that for my audience out there who wants to get into this and
Hmm.
if they've got a few years of experience under their belts, because I'm also kind of curious, like getting repped with Atlas, one of the biggest in LA by far. How is the whole journey like of getting
Yeah.
signed with them? Yeah, if you want to talk
So
about it.
yeah, so I arrived in New York, and I'm also an audio engineer. So I'd made my own demos because again I just had no money, starting in the industry. And I'd made my own demos and did update them, every year, every couple years, and they'd gotten to a place where they were strong. And I arrived in New York, and I was staying with some family friends, and I was just sending out emails. I sent out emails to um, all the top, New York and LA agencies, and I started getting some meetings. I took some meetings with, these things are also kind of delicate, so I want to try and protect people's privacy. But like, I was taking some meetings with some big agencies, and we were just filling it out. It was definitely the next level for my business. And looking back, by how demanding and um, intense the agency system is, I wasn't ready. So I'm grateful that things happened the way they did. But this is in 2017, and I uh, got a referral to Atlas, and I took a meeting with my now agent, and I Jim Cummings was represented there at the time, voice of Winnie the Pooh, Darkwing Duck, Pete,
Oh
etc.
yeah.
Uh, and uh, and Gilbert Gottfried, I think, also was represented, I think, there until his passing, if I'm not mistaken. And
Oh
so
wow.
the fan in me was really probably in the driver's seat at that meeting. Everyone was very patient with me, and I also was like I was very naive. I didn't understand really the degree of commitment. They were like, you need to be available for auditions, during the day. And I was like, but I have to work during the day. And they're like, yes, this is the sort of the double bind we find ourselves in, right? The conundrum.
Yeah.
And I was underprepared. I just didn't understand the degree of commitment, and I wasn't ready for it. And I started freelancing with Atlas, doing some auditions with them, a few a week, and every like 3 or 4 months for the next like 3 years or something, I would get sent some stuff, I think, from the LA division, if I remember correctly. And I would go out for a video game. I would go out for a big thing that it was just worlds bigger than what I was going for on the pay to plays and freelance. And we just, there was a little bit of relationship there. I saw, some, I started to get to know their team. And in 2020, and this, it's come under some controversy in as of late, but the PGM VO list was being built, and by a fellow agency member. And I just saw it. I was getting into VA Twitter at the time, and I on a whim signed up. And then probably a month or so later, I got an email from one of my LA agents now, and he was like, "Hey, we saw you on this list. We went through your file with us, and we heard your stuff, and we'd like to discuss, our relationship, our working relationship." And I was freelancing with another agency at the time, and I was like, okay, let's take this meeting. And I got signed for a year and a half. And then I was able to put up some decent work during that period, evidently, and I got recently re-signed for the maximum of the 3 years. So I'm on a 3-year contract with them now. So that's
Awesome.
my story with them, and they were also my dream agency, because I'm a huge Jim fan, and I just love their comic book aesthetic. I don't know, it feels kind of shallow to be obsessed with their aesthetic, but I love the comic book aesthetic, and the team is just the best people in the biz, and I am just so grateful. They changed my stars, so that's my story with them, and everyone's story is different.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else that you want to share, talk about? Like, I don't know, anything that is not under NDA, like your production, if you want to talk about, that real quick. And yeah, just talking about your studio, like Cricket
Yeah.
Sound and what that's all about. And,
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure. For sure, yeah. So there's another part of my life and my work that is audio engineering. So I've done post-production sound for feature films. I've done ADR capture, ADR engineering for feature films and short films alike. I think that I fell in love with the on-camera filmmaking post-production process when I was living in New York. That's when I started networking with filmmakers and became their initially very affordable sound guy while I was learning how to work everything. Got thousands of dollars of plugins, my God, from Isotope RX and all these different things. So I built a sound effect library that is just hundreds and hundreds of hours of sound effects. And so uh I really do love sound production. I love being on the other side of the glass as well as performing. I have dabbled with the idea of becoming an indie, sound designer for indie games. I think sound design is so fascinating. Foley production, Foley performance of sound effects. I've done for films and also engineered the film. And yeah, it's just so refreshing. So I would love to do more, production stuff. I've been so busy with the performance stuff, gratefully. But yeah, I that definitely looking to scratch that sound design itch again. I'm looking for the next big project.
yeah. And any last piece of advice that you want to close us out on?
Yeah, I mean, um, I you've had other great, talents on here that have reiterated like it is about acting, and I think uh someone said on Twitter, it may have been Nice Quinones, but um, they said, tell being a fan of something is not enough to entitle you to working in the thing. You have to couple that with skill, and someone who's established telling you that recommending that you get training is not gatekeeping. And um I think that is such a valuable bit there, because you can sometimes hear that and be disappointed, or hear that and feel talked down to, and hear that because I know I was there, when people were like, "You need to train in this aspect of voice acting," and I was like, "I went to college for acting," and they're like, "Yes, it's different." So invest in your education, get out to group class, meet people. You get to work with these incredible directors and producers and casting agents. Show them what you can do, and above all, bring joy and fun into the booth, because these $1,000 ears can hear them. These microphones can hear them, so and they can tell.
Yeah. And would you like to do an outro for the podcast?
Yeah, what does that look like?
Basically, you can say, "My name is Chris Akawa. I've done this, this, and this," and you've just thank you for watching Station Square, or however you want to do it.
Cool. uh I'm Chris Okawa, voice of Rogan in The House of the Dead, Vigard in Fire Emblem, and sorry, can I get another take at it?
Sure.
Uh, 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 all right, let me write this down for a second here. Let me write this down. I don't want to get tongue tied here.
Okay.
Do, 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 do. Okay. All right. I'm Chris Okawa, voice of Rogan and magician in the House of the Dead, Vigard in I screwed it up again. As you can see. As you can see, I've lost my live performance touch. One more moment here. Mm, cool. Hi, I'm Chris Okawa. I'm the voice of Rogan and magician in the House of the Dead, Vigard in Fire Emblem, the duo Bondo in Prince of Tennis U17 World Cup. And this has been no, I screwed it up again. All right, one more time. This should be the outro. This should be
Yeah, pretty much.
hey, all right, here we go. Hey, I'm Chris Okawa, the voice of Rogan and magician in the House of the Dead, Vigard in Fire Emblem, the duo Bondo in Prince of Tennis U17 World Cup, and you've been listening to Station Square. Thanks so much for having me.
Right on, man. And yeah, if you missed any of this, it shall be going up on YouTube later this week or even today. Depends. But yeah, thank you for watching and stick around for next time. And until then, punch every day in the face. And yeah, love y'all. Stay safe out there. Stay creative. And yeah, love y'all. Have a good rest of your day or weeks coming up ahead. I'm Robert Jackson, and I'm officially signing out. Good day. Peace.